I think it's funny because even my own principal would tell us that the zip code that we're coming from will follow us anywhere we went. And it was funny because we would hear him and we would mock him because for 4 years he told us that's your zip code. Anywhere you go, people will see it. And it was coming from I want to say I cannot. I think there was like 99% Hispanic or I wouldn't even want to say Mexican kids at my school.
Mm-hmm.
All of us experienced it coming from a border town where you're experiencing a lot of us crossing like the border every day. We're constantly living between them, like those two places that just like I wouldn't say they're both really different, but at the same like at that point they both merged. And I think what happened at like my high school, like my experience itself, is that we wanted to prove differently that our zip code did not define how smart we were.
I'm from Riverside County, which is like predominantly Hispanic or Chicanx population. And my parents are both from or born in Mexico, but they decided that they wanted to birth us here in the US, but we did learn only Spanish when we were little. So when I went into kindergarten, I didn't go to pre-K, but when I went into kindergarten, all I knew was Spanish. And I don't know if there was just like no like English learning class, but I was just basically just placed into like the normal one, even though I didn't know what like anyone was saying. But I also don't remember it, it's okay. But then they forced me to like just learn completely English, and like I had to just stop talking Spanish. So I did slowly lose like Spanish talking like when I was back at home with my parents, and my mom knew English, so I just talked to her mainly. But then with my dad, I did have to like still force myself to speak some Spanish. But like now I'm like getting it back because I told myself that I need to start talking more Spanish because I don't want to lose it. And I just think it's like a really good quality to know two languages.
Well, we went from Mexico to Ciudad Juarez, which is a neighboring city to El Paso, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
When we arrived in El Paso, Texas, they put us in school, and our parents had put us in a couple of English learning classes, but I don't think it was even a month that we were there. So, yeah, but we were, preparing to move on. So we finally moved on. We went to El Paso, Texas. At school, the teacher gave me a buddy, and she told me to whatever this girl did, you do. So whatever book came out, whatever page she worked on, I just mimicked her, even though I wasn't understanding anything.
Yeah.
And the little girl did speak Spanish, so we communicated.
Oh, that's good.
And even though we had this arrangement, I was very uncomfortable. I miss my country. I miss my best friend that I left behind. I went home and cried and said, do I have to go to school? Can I just stay home?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, no way. The anti-Mexican sentiment in El Paso, Texas was very palpable. You could feel it. You could hear it. Yeah. And then when we went to Los Angeles, it was a much more relaxed society, and there was I didn't feel prejudice, certainly not at school.
Yeah.
The way I had felt it in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're very lucky we got out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of what happened to me because bilingual classes were offered only from 1st to 3rd grade. Then they did not have a program for us. The thing that was different is that for my specific year, I'm not sure what happened, but a lot of kids, that was their first year for TJ. They were able to complete a whole classroom from kids that had just moved schools. So they were at first, when I first got there, we were all scrambled through all these classes. And I think now that I'm really thinking about it, it's like they didn't want us with the other kids. They're like, let's just put them over here because we cannot give them their specific attention that they need because we cannot understand.
If it slips out that I'm Mexican, or if like knowing me, like I'll just say a phrase just in Spanish, then all of a sudden like they'll start asking me questions, but it's kind of like as if it's like a magic trick, but I'm like, okay, like it's just another language, you know? But so yeah, I think it's mainly like it's never really peers, or if anything, like maybe peers in the university level, because there is like majority or more white than Mexican here. But I think all of like high school, or like at least K through 12, it was teachers that made it feel like weird.
Mm-hmm. Later on, our dad went to a teacher parent meeting, and he was struggling with his English to converse with the teacher, and the teacher finally got impatient and started speaking Spanish, and my eyes and my ears opened wide. It's like, all this time she spoke Spanish and she didn't help me?
Yeah.
And I just didn't like her after that. Yeah. Apparently this woman was getting ready to marry, and maybe she didn't want to emphasize the fact that she was Hispanic, because she didn't look Hispanic, and maybe this was her reason. I understood this stuff later on in life.
Yeah, that's the thing, because even today and even through college, like, you still see people that do not have perfect English as less smart. You see them and you hear them and you think, why, like, that they don't have the intellect when it's just a language. Yeah. Like, just like, if anything, they're bilingual. They even like learn, like they know more languages than someone that just knows English. Yeah. But we're still like looking down upon them. And as much as I hate it right now, we hear the whole like, learn English, you're in America. And even before like Trump was a thing. Yeah. I even throughout crossing the border, I remember one of the CVPs, before I even started school in the U.S., he told my mother, like, you have an American daughter, she should know English. He literally told her that. Oh my gosh. And you know what? My mom did feel it. She felt obligated for me to learn English. Like, she was really ashamed that I, as a citizen, did not know English. When I was still getting an education in Mexico, don't get me wrong, it didn't mean that I was any, like, less smart, but that really like impacted my mom.
Yes, well, I think the older you arrive in the United States to learn English from a different language, the more you're able to preserve your mother tongue, your primary language. If you are younger, like Rosa and Oscar and Roger and Mary, obviously, most of their life is lived here. If they speak Spanish at home, it's the minimum, and all their intellectual work and studies are in English, and they tend to forget. So it is more difficult for them. So I cannot speak for them, but I know it requires discipline and work. So, and I don't know if you know why my own son doesn't speak Spanish that well, even though I started out speaking to him in Spanish all the time. He learned to read in Spanish. When he learned to read, it was in Spanish. I taught him with little magnetic letters that go on the refrigerator and cards and yes. So he learned, but then my ex-husband, quote, quote, stole him from me, took him to Mexico. He was there about a month. I didn't know if I was going to get my son back. When he came back, I did not want to make it easy for my ex-husband to do that again. I wanted my son to stand out in a crowd of somebody who didn't speak Spanish in case he was taken away again. So from then on, and then I had the animosity with my ex-husband, and I rejected his town, his music, his people, and I just decided that from now on we're going to speak only English.
Because I think the UC, you have to have at least 2 years of a foreign language. And in high school, I personally chose Spanish, but we only had like Spanish or German. So I was like, I don't know what I need German for, but that's probably a little racist. But but I just think like at least in like my community, I was like I would rather just do Spanish because I don't see when I personally would use German. But now hindsight, since I already know Spanish, I probably just should have done German. But yeah, it's weird that like they do tell you at least like K through 8th grade. They're like, oh, don't speak that here because you have to like, be successful. You have to know English. Then all of a sudden it's high school and they're like, oh, but the UC or universities want you to have at least a second language like in the back of your hand. And then you come to UC and let's say you're doing like human biology or something, or at least to UCSC, it's a mandatory requirement that you learn medical Spanish. So I'm like, oh, all of a sudden you want us to know Spanish and you want us to be fluent in it.
It came to a point where I was in school, and I want to say I think it was middle school, that I really, really, really wished I only spoke English. Yeah. Like, I really, like, I was like, why did my mom even, like, didn't just bring me here? I could have just spoke English like everyone else. And I was still in the, like, Hispanic, like, area. And I still felt like that.
Yeah.
So, I cannot imagine, like, going to an area where they're mostly white.
Yeah.
Like, even coming here has been an impact. Like, it's still out of my bubble.
Yeah.
And even, like, sometimes I can be, even as simple as being at Trader Joe's. It can feel so weird for me because I look around, everyone's white, when I'm so used to looking around, and everyone just looking like me.
Was stunned one day when I spoke to another counselor, and she described this Hispanic family where the woman, the mother of the two boys, would walk the children to the high school every day and walk them. I don't know if she walked them home, but she definitely walked them to the high school every day. So they wouldn't play tricks and miss school, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So this was a mother whose priority was these kids have to get to school. And this counselor, who had this family in her workload, in her, she was in charge of them, described them as being animals. And I thought I was looking at somebody that belonged or could have belonged to the KKK.
Yeah.
Oh, and this is just one example, and this is just something I witnessed. But there, like I said, the prejudice and the racism and the elitism was very evident in that school.
Yeah.
I think it's just best to make sure you don't lose your Spanish or try to practice it as much as you can, because it definitely comes out in places that you least expect when someone does need to translate something. It's just kind of helpful for like whoever needs the translation, and it's just like nice. It's just a nice thing to do. Or sometimes it helps you out because I think I've been in multiple places where it has been only Spanish speaking, which is rare, but it does happen. And then I'm the one who communicates to them and shares the information, and they know the knowledge, or they have knowledge for the people who only speak English, so it helps them and it helps other people. I don't know if that made sense.
No, it does make sense.
Well, I think you have to work on all areas, in the area of valuing a second language, in the area of valuing the culture, the food, the holidays, the costumes, the historical figures. If you include all that at school in a very determined way. I remember at Hilltop High School, we used to have, I forget what they call it. They were called fairs, but there was a Chinese table where people were writing your name in the Chinese characters. There was a Hispanic table where you could drink hot chocolate. It was like a culture fair. I'm sorry, culture fair.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Hilltop High School had also the flags program where people could choose different languages to study. Remember the flags program?
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, celebrating each other's holidays, talking up the food and the costumes and the culture. Yeah. And through art, through music, through events, through holidays, and just have it be inclusive. And then people are free to claim, oh yeah, at my house, my mother makes tamales or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It is not in the agenda of the majority of people. It's probably not in the agenda of the commercial, the commerce situation at large, because society is bent on selling you a certain lifestyle.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of a hard job, but it's got to be done by schools, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we should not shame them. I think there's a lot of shaming that goes into the kids' funding.
Yeah.
Towards like schools because we know which schools get the most kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not getting funding, and even the way we look at it too. We look at them like it shouldn't be, how do I want to say this, like a goal for them to get like perfect English, or like that shouldn't be their like only goal. They should still that's part of their learning. I think when you just come here, that your focus is on that.
Yeah.
And that's your main goal. Learning English. And I'm like, well, yes, that's part of it, but you should not stress it so much that their whole shift is towards that. Like, make it another subject, just like anything else.